You knew going into this, and I think it's a fair question.
Yeah.
It was going to be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump.
Sure.
Right. And I'm not saying your vote would have changed anything, but I went into this saying just the same way I went into it with Joe Biden is that Joe Biden is not my first, second, or third pick.
Yeah.
But our democracy is on the line here, and that's why I picked Joe Biden, because I don't think he's a bad person.
Sure.
I think we could agree on this. I don't think Kamala Harris is a bad person. I think she's a good mother,
Sure.
A good wife. I think she's a decent human being. I had the chance to speak with her twice.
Awesome.
We wouldn't have, I think you could agree with me on this.
Yeah.
And I know you didn't vote for Trump. I'm not asking you to defend Donald Trump, because I don't think you will.
No, not at all.
But we have, these troops coming into these cities wouldn't have happened under Kamala Harris. Food stamps wouldn't have been taken away from Americans if Kamala Harris was president. Medicare wouldn't have been taken away from all these Americans if Kamala Harris was president. We wouldn't have had the January 6th insurrection. I know that was before Kamala, if Trump ever got into office. I just feel like these people wouldn't have been murdered on these boats. We're supposed to be on the honor system. We don't even know who these people are.
Yeah.
I don't know what would have happened in the Middle East. I don't know what would have happened with the war in Ukraine. They're both very complex situations.
Sure.
But I look at Kamala Harris as somebody who's not perfect, but I think she would have been a much better alternative, like night and day. And I think, not you, but I think of a lot of people who did not vote for her because she's a woman and because she's black.
Well, think about it, about how many people didn't vote in general.
I agree. Yeah.
It's the candidate's job to inspire people, right?
Yep.
And she failed at that, right? Being fair. But more importantly, recognize where we're at. Had she won, I remember seeing a sign at the No Kings rally. We'd all be at brunch. Well, truth be told, this wealth gap wasn't going to get addressed under Kamala Harris, because she's bought and paid for just like Donald Trump is bought and paid for.
You think they're two of the same? That you think they're? I mean, Jared Kushner got $2.1 billion from the Saudis. Donald Trump has made almost $1 billion from his family from this crypto scandal. I mean, I don't think there's any comparison.
Sure. Well, if we're talking about degrees of corruption,
sure.
Does it really matter if people cannot afford the cost of living, right? And that's the message
and you don't
that
think
she did not run on.
You don't think Kamala would have? Well, I mean, we can speak about the message, but you don't think? I mean, she wanted to lower taxes for middle class families.
Yeah. So here's where allow me, please.
Sure.
Okay. If the wealth gap is widening, and more of that money is going to the top, and we see this big iceberg, which is why I ran for president. I often get this question: why did you choose president as your first election to run it? I said, if we're all on a ship together and we're taking on water and there's an iceberg ahead, you asking me to run locally is like plugging a hole in the ship when somebody should be steering us away from the iceberg. That iceberg right now is artificial intelligence and automation. And as this continues to deploy across our nation, people are going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose the ability to pay for their roof over their head and food on their table. And then you got a cruel bastard named Donald Trump who says, I'm going to make your pain that much worse so that way I can make sure that you don't get access to these Epstein files.
I agree with you.
Right?
But you wouldn't call Kamala cruel, would you?
Not at all. Not at all.
So
they're not the same. But what ends up happening is, because we're going through this pain point right now, look at what's happened as a result. All these leaders, these people that ordinarily wouldn't get the time of day, all these new candidates, they're fighting and they're demonstrating their leadership.
I think that's great.
And that's the result of this pain that we're going through. If Kamala was at the helm, guarantee we would say it's asleep at the wheel, and we would still be heading towards the iceberg, because she's not willing to address that.
But respectfully, I don't think she would have given $100 billion tax breaks to the top 1%. In fact, I know she wouldn't have done that. I do think our economy would have been, I'm not saying everything would have been back to normal overnight, but I do think we would have been headed in a better direction than we are under Donald Trump. Look at all these tariffs and what it's doing to the economy.
Okay, hold on. Let's go back to when you say back to normal, because I'm going to make a reference to
some normalcy.
Asher Edelman. Do you know who that is?
I do not.
He was the gentleman that was the actual human being that was supposed to be the character from Wall Street, Gordon Gekko.
Right.
Okay. He was based on him. So he was on CNBC during Bernie's campaign, and they asked him, well, who do you think should be the president? And he said, Bernie Sanders. And he said, why? He said, well, because there is a large swath of people who have a depression happening. And the people on the station said, what? I don't understand what you mean. He said, well, for those people who have not seen their wages increase, but see all the prices going up around them, they've been in a depression for a long time. So under Kamala, she wasn't offering anything to address the wealth gap, and she wasn't offering a way for that bottom to raise.
Well, she did say that she wanted the rich to pay their fair share, and she actually wanted to raise taxes on the tech billionaires. She also said that if you were a household income family of making under $400,000 a year, that she would lower your taxes, I think, to somewhere around 26%. I mean, I'm not saying she's perfect, but I do think she was on the side of middle America, where I feel like Donald Trump and his cronies are only on the side of the top 1%. Again, I'm not saying she's perfect, but when I look at Donald Trump and the $100 billion tax credits he's given to the top 1%, while many families are losing food stamps and Medicaid. Yes. Again, I'm not saying she's perfect, but you would agree with me that this stuff wouldn't be happening if Kamala was president.
I agree with that statement.
Yeah. Isn't that a big deal, though?
It is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And I knew that this was going to be the path that we were going to end up with Donald Trump at the helm, right? But the simple fact is we are seeing people who are coming out and advocating for policies that actually are going to change people's lives, because that was not the case, and that has not been the case.
Give me an example, like one of your policies or a policy that is not being implemented or talked about by Democrats.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me,
yeah.
While I was running for president, I ran on the freedom dividend. And for those that may not know, there was a presidential candidate in 2020 named Andrew Yang.
Andrew's done this show before.
Okay, so he was the first to bring to the forefront the idea of freedom dividend or universal basic income, right? Because we've got this wealth disparity happening. What happens when people at the bottom run out of money? Because we are at record high credit card debt right now. And I already listed off all the scenarios where we have repos on the rise, we have foreclosures on the rise, so people can't afford things. What ends up happening is if you can't be a customer of local retailers, then what happens to those retailers and those employees? They have to cut hours, then they eventually have to cut those employees entirely, and then all that capital that's sitting at the top, those smaller businesses become stressed assets, and then they're able to consume them, and we become this oligarchic system. So for me, it's important that we speed up the velocity of the dollar if we want to project ourselves away from this concentration at the top, which means you have a progressive tax towards those at the top. And then that money that gets collected, rather than be deployed through bureaucratic programs that often are slow and effective and costly, give it back to the people, empower them. Guess what? They will serve their own problems, right? That's like a Republican talking point. I want you to pick up yourself by your bootstraps, right? But it also sustains our capitalistic society. Because those small businesses, which we are seeing here in Las Vegas, they're not getting the customer base that they once did. And they don't have the capital resources to sustain themselves through the road ahead. So how do you remedy that? You've got to take care of some of the risks that we have. Medicare for all, having lived in Canada, I experienced a society that puts healthcare as a right and how important that is to the overall
But isn't that a stance that Kamala Harris had in the Democrats?
No. Remember, she ran on that during her primary as a president, and then she walked that back, right?
Well, when you say Medicare for all, does that include undocumented immigrants?
Well, I mean, I think if we think about it this way, we already have a system that takes care of anybody regardless of citizenship. Hospitals, if somebody shows up, they're not checking that type of documentation. Now, are we going to put together a system that regardless of who walks through the door, healthcare system is there to take care of them at their most vulnerable? Yes. Can we work out a system to where we mitigate how this gets deployed? Absolutely.
I don't disagree with you. And we live in one of the richest, if not the richest country in the world. And yes, we should have health care for all. I don't disagree with you. If you're an undocumented immigrant and you're extremely sick, you should be able to go to the hospital and get help. Yes, I agree with you.
Well, think about it. We've got tourists that come here to get sick. I know when I lived in Canada, I wasn't a citizen. I got treated.
I don't disagree with you on that. The only point that I was making is that we're much closer to that on the Democrat side, I think you would agree, than we are on the Republican side.
Well, and that's where it comes down to, you need somebody like me to articulate that to the right. If you have a small business, one of the things that keeps you anti-competitive to the large businesses, you have to be able to provide that health care, right? That's a bargaining chit to be able to compete against the larger guys. If I took that off the table and said, you know what, we're just going to make sure that insurance is taken care of by society, not only will we reduce the cost because we are paying double any industrialized nation. If I can make sure that you also have an improved experience, then I'm affording you the opportunity to go out and compete and do what you do best and attract those employees without having that one chit that only the top can really take care of.
I understand that.
Right? So that's an improvement.
Yep.
And I'm saving us money because remember, we have $38 trillion of debt right now.
We do. Donald Trump got us in $8.2 trillion in debt in his first 4 years, and it doesn't look like looks like it's probably going to be higher than that this go around.